Up though. Good evening, welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unfiltered on Notoriously Opinionated. It's your man that goes by many names and monikers. Call me Scrap the Film Guru. What's happening? What's up? What's going on? So tonight we're gonna be tackling the last episode of um, what we have been calling mental health awareness, I guess it would be, So we've been talking about mental health in the Black community, especially talking about Black men, right? We've been talking about uh, just the different ways that your mental health should be important to you, what you can do about it. We've given you tools, we've given you ideas, we've given you thoughts. All you gotta do, grab them. Remember, holler at me if you need to holler at Cecil. Holler at me if you need to holler at Cecil. And remember, if you have not, no, if you do not know what I'm talking about right now, you have to go back and watch the previous episodes to find out what I'm talking about. But Johnny made an offer, right? Johnny made an offer. So uh, if you are wanting to participate in that offer, you need to hit me up in the chat and let me know. But you gotta say it right, or else I'm not gonna give you the deal, right? So, and if you didn't watch that episode, then that means you got to go back and watch all the episodes from this month so you can see what I'm talking about, and then you can get the deal. Uh, but it's a cool 20, cool 20. All right. So what else? Yeah, so this month has been it's been really, really heavy, because talking about mental health and maintaining your mental health, I mean, that's a lifelong mission for some people, So it's really of critical importance that we have, and I'm glad that we had this discussion. But in next month's episode, I really want to talk about something lighter. And I haven't locked it in yet, but um, it's between. So I'm Scrap the Film Guru, so I would not mind talking about movies. Some of the upcoming movies of 2025 that they say is coming out, whether it's Marvel movies, horror movies, whatever it is. Getting the panel on here. You don't have to be a film expert. You don't have to be in the movie business to come on as a guest and talk about your take on certain films, certain genres, XYZ. So that's one. Of course, talking about Kansas City sports, Chiefs, Royals, whatever. Uh, so in regards to the Chiefs, could be talking about the upcoming draft, could be talking about um, what you think the potential is for the Chiefs to run it back in 2025, things like that. How the Royals is going to do this year, some light. Or, and this is what I really been wanting to get to. I seen earlier this week, there was a Forbes list, and I'm gonna bring it up here in a second. There was a Forbes list of the top 50 greatest MCs of all time. I'm not necessarily sure who the hell Bad Bunny really is. I've heard of him, never heard his music, and if I have heard his music, I didn't know it was him. But Bad Bunny was in the top 50. So what I'm thinking about also doing potentially is going over who you actually believe are the 50 greatest MCs of all time generationally, right? So we're gonna do this in generations. So we're gonna go from 1979 to 1999, and then from 2000 to the current date, right? So two separate lists of 50, right? Uh, so if I do that, I'll be asking for people to kind of tap in, tune in, and give me what their top artists are. It don't have to be 50, but if it's 25, then that'll work too. Uh, so I just wanted to be something light, But tonight, we're talking about post-incarceration syndrome, right? And how that affects the entire community. All right. That's what we're going in tonight. Notoriously Opinionated. Let's go. What's going on, my brother? How you doing?
What's happening?
Man, like what are we doing right now? Like me and you.
I'm just
like, hold up, where you at? Right there?
Yes.
Okay. So we did talk about that 50 that Forbes 50 greatest MCs list, didn't we?
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, we did.
Unfortunately, that's I don't know. That's in the running for being the next podcast or the next podcast series for next month. And it might not be a series; it might just be like 2 episodes. But I'm thinking about it. All right, so. Please introduce yourself, good brother, and let the people know who you are and why you on my show.
I am Ndugu Mustafa Keita Nkosi Durrell Lamont 2x to the third power, which means, because this brother always asks this, I am the brother who has been chosen to be a ruler and a warrior in the liberation fight for all people. I'm twice as good as I was yesterday, but not as good as I'll be tomorrow, 3 times over, mentally, physically, and spiritually. But you can call me Durrell. That's what my mama called me.
This is my brother Daryl.
Yeah.
This is my other brother Daryl.
Yes, sir. But I prefer brother Mustafa.
So why you tell everybody to call you Daryl?
I mean, hey, it's really not about what you call me. It's about what I answer to.
That also is true, but would you answer to Daryl is the question.
Yeah, my mom calls me that every day. I answer to it. So yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So we got one more brother that might be pulling up later on. We're gonna see. But I really the episode tonight, we talking about post-traumatic prison disorder, post-incarceration syndrome, whatever you want to call it, right? But it would behoove us to move on into the topic before we actually get into what is trauma.
Without a doubt.
So what would be your definition of trauma? What does trauma mean to you?
Well, basically, trauma, without being too clinical, is about some type of abuse, some types of overwhelming event, or some type of pressure that has happened to you, and you have a difficulty processing that. And that process, not being able to process it, turns into stress, and that stress turns into depression, and sometimes becomes even more problematic for you. So basically, in a nutshell, without again being too clinical, it's about an event or something that happened to you that scarred you that you haven't dealt with.
Okay.
in the negative.
In the negative, right? I completely agree with that. Like, and kind of like we was alluding to previously, like trauma does not have to be something grandiose. You know, trauma can be really small. Trauma can be as small as stubbing your toe, you know, or as big as uh, doing life in prison. You know, so both of those things are traumatic in their own right,
Yes,
right?
sir.
So it's crazy because I'm hearing you give a definition, and I did a I did a I was on the news like 5 6 years ago, talking about kids at Central Central Middle School, and they was asking me like, you know, what are some of the reasons why some of these kids are getting in trouble? And I was like, you know, they have all this trauma going on in their life, and they don't know how to deal with it. And when you said it, you almost said exactly what I said, almost exactly like I said it. That's what made me think about that. You know what I'm saying? But you know, kids deal with trauma, so don't think that is just adults deal with trauma. You know, a lot of the trauma, you know, and this is outside of the PICS, or what is it, PTPS. Outside of that, a lot of the trauma that we deal with as adults is from childhood trauma.
Without a
You
doubt.
did? So a lot of it is from childhood trauma, and we just trying to figure it out. But that grows into uh, bad decisions. A lot of black men go to prison, and then a lot of black men are released. I tried to get a number. I tried to add. I asked Google a variety of different ways. I asked AI and all kind of stuff. How many black men are released from prison annually? The number is too, you know, is too scattered. It's based on too many
Right.
different rubrics and all this different type stuff. And so it never really gave me a number, but it was like it's a high number of black men that are released from prison every year, just like it's a high number of black men who are sent to prison every year, you know. So uh what we're talking about being post-traumatic prison disorder is the number of men who are released from prison every year. So uh how does uh first off, why are we talking about prison trauma uh and post prison trauma?
You're asking why are we?
Yeah, why are we talking about that?
Well, I mean, if I had to be straightforward with it, in many ways, the places that we come from, the places that we live in, even outside of the actual prison system, are like prisons. Because if, you know, like late great Malcolm X said, it doesn't take steel walls and concrete to create a prison. So many of us, black men, black women, and people of other creeds and colors, we live in America as a corporation is becoming a prison. So this is why we're discussing these things.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are living in prisons of their own mind. You know,
Yes.
like their mind has them handcuffed. You know what I'm saying? Like they are, it's like they are completely handcuffed by their own irrational decisions and the thoughts in their own mind. They in psychology they call them ants, you know, automatic negative thoughts. Cecil brought that up either last week or a couple of weeks ago, you know, and ants are a bad mamma jamma because like just like real ants, if a whole colony of real ants got on you, especially if they fire ants or something, they can tear you up, you know. They can tear you up just like all those negative mental ants.
Well, one thing I'd like to add, when you made the comparison between stubbing your toe and the prison system, the traumas are trauma. It both can be considered trauma, but the stubbing of the toe, that's pretty much called blunt force trauma. So that means that impact of that bam, there's a trauma that goes to your brain, But usually that's something that you don't carry on throughout the day. Once you've gotten past the pain, it continues on. But the difference between that and the prison trauma or actual actual clinical trauma is the fact that your emotions, we know from psychology that every emotion that you have is connected to, every thought that you have is connected to an emotion. Every thought that we have is connected to an emotion. So what trauma does is that event is so impactful that you draw from that base. So if someone was to maybe punch you out on the playground when you were a little person and it was very embarrassing, anytime your mind gets ready for some kind of combative or some kind of situation that could be combative, your mind will go back to the emotions that you felt on that day, and you could blow up and make something bigger than it actually was, or you could curl up and not do anything in the same manner that you did before. So when it's talking about traumatic and you're talking about post, one of the things I don't like about the term post-traumatic stress disorder, although it's talking about this is post, meaning after the event.
Okay. Even though it's post, meaning after the event, I don't necessarily know where the brother was going with that. But hopefully he
way
will
of doing things, a habit or a routine that continues over and over in your life, whether it's eating at 9 o'clock every morning or whatever the case may be. Well, what trauma does is it causes that cognitive dissonance that we spoke of before with Cecil, is your mind is telling you one thing, but your emotions are doing something different. And so with the trauma, you're unable to make rational decisions. So when you talk about young men and women who are out in the streets committing crime, usually that's based on some trauma that happened in their childhood. And so we said, well, why don't they just stop? Why don't they just stop the crime? Well, as a survival tactic, sometimes those emotions being separated from the thought, you use that as an escape. And so anytime something happens, whether it be poverty, because poverty is something that can cause trauma, most definitely. When you living in a place where you don't know if you're going to eat every day, if you don't know if you even want to go to school because you're hungry, that's traumatic. And so that can carry on to the point where I don't want to feel this way no more. I don't want this emotion. So your rational thinking goes beyond how do I get a proper job to be able, it goes beyond that. I need to satisfy this hurt that's inside of me. And as we know, hurt people hurt people. So in order to get over the anger, off something, and in my mind to relieve that pain and everything.
Okay, real quick. Your camera froze like twice. Once
Yours
for
did
and oh, okay. So I guess to me, I thought I'm feeling like I'm still alive, and to you, so I guess we'll just have to watch the replay and see which one it actually was. So
Could have been both. No.
Hopefully both of them were still playing, and it just looked like that to us. So but I think I said that because I missed some of what you said, and I really wanted to hear that. I think for me it cut out around you were just beginning your point of, even though it's post traumatic syndrome, and then you went out.
So basically what I was saying, I was making a juxtaposition or a juxtapose between the blunt force trauma that you have when you hit your toe. Bam, you have that. And then once you've gotten over the fact that you hit your toe or stubbed your toe, that trauma is usually over. But when we're talking about clinical trauma, we're talking about something that happens so impactful that your brain doesn't disconnect from that thing. So anytime something similar to that happens, then you revert back to the feelings and the emotions that you had the first time the incident happened. And I likened that to a schoolyard fight. If you got embarrassed or beat up really bad in a schoolyard fight, anytime from that point, when you get into a confrontational situation, the emotions that you had way back post that event, but way back before, may come into contact if you don't deal with them. And so maybe you may blow a situation out of proportion, or maybe you may lessen it or what have you. But when I was saying about the difference between that and prison is when you get into the prison, there's usually no post. Sometimes there's no post, because if you don't deal with it, it's post the event, but it's not necessarily post the trauma, because the trauma continues to go on until you deal with it and heal from it. So when I use the term post-traumatic, of course, they're talking about post, the trauma that came after the event, but many times it's never dealt with, so there's really no post.
Dig that.
Is in the postseason of football. Go ahead.
Professor Larte, you there with us?
Man, loud and clear, brother, loud and clear. And I want to also put that, man, that slavery, that incarceration ain't never ended from slavery, brother. It's still ongoing, that trauma.
And that's something that's another aspect of it, kind of alluding back, kind of tangentially into what Mustafa was saying earlier. You know, like slavery is still real. You know what I'm saying? And they implement slavery by incarcerating you. Like, you are legally a slave, and you lose your rights. You lose a great deal of your rights. Like, the only rights that you really maintain as a prisoner are human rights. Basic human rights is a lot of things that you maintain. And so when you are released, you are still kind of under the thumb of the government, because there's this thing called parole. So yeah, that's still slavery, and that is another part of how you can experience trauma. It's guys that I know has been on parole for a decade, you know, and that's insane to me. But what's Professor Larte? How would you define trauma just in general?
Oh man, you know, working in the education field, the thing that I realized working with youth is how, you know, we can all watch, you know, that snake be killed, and some of us can be traumatized and some of us cannot, right? So like when I define and I look at trauma, I always have to take into account just that spectrum, right? That variety. But the way that I've always understood trauma is something that you observe or experience that you know, is outside of your morals and values, and that you can't quite understand why this happened, right? Um, but something that impacts you in a way that creates an emotional anxiety attack, right? It releases a ton of cortisol, if we want to get real clinical about it, in your brain chemicals. And it's something that, as brother said, every time you come into that situation, you're going to have that same trigger response, that same anxiety response, right? Whether it's people yelling at you, whether it's somebody looking at you some type of way, that can trigger your trauma response.
Exactly. So this next question will be just kind of for everybody. I'm gonna just toss it out there. Like, what are so we're talking about post-traumatic. You know what? Before we get to the post-traumatic part, let's go to the actual traumatic part. You know, what are some of the things about prison that could be deemed as traumatic? Like, what is so traumatic about prison? If there's young men watching my show right now, what is traumatic about prison?
Myself, or who you asking? Just either of us? Well, I would like to say, first of all, I believe that the trauma, as we said before, begins even before the arrest. So many of us are traumatized and go through traumatic situations, living in certain neighborhoods, going to certain school systems, like the brother said, having certain health issues. So there's already some trauma there built even before a crime is committed. And then the arrest in and of itself could even be traumatic. We understand, especially as Black men, that, you know, catching a case, you could die before you even get to the courtroom. So there's no need to fake or pretend about that. So the next thing I believe would be about the culture shock. You know, there's a culture shock that comes with coming to prison. Even if you know, one of the hardest gangsters on the street or whatever, when you get to have to do that very first time in the county jail and you're doing like that first 48 hours, that stuff can be traumatizing because you're just out of a whole different routine. Your entire life has changed. And so that in and of itself. And then the war stories that you hear about what happens in prisons, that just the hearing of it. Again, as the brother said, it doesn't have to be necessarily something that you experience. It could be something that you've heard that could traumatize you. You could hear about a situation that's going like when we were talking about COVID, when COVID hadn't made it all the way here yet. When it was coming, some people were traumatized by just like, I'm a sickly person. Just hearing about it, I haven't even experienced it. So just hearing the war stories about what we think about, watching the movies, the media, the rap music, or whatever, talking about how bad prison, that's traumatizing in and of itself. And then you actually have the culture of violence that comes with being in prison. We know what happens in prisons. Prisons, you know, they're not nice places. They're not Sesame Street. So you have to deal with that. Then you have, again, when we're talking about slavery, you have an overseer. You know, someone that's like, you're thinking this is a proper way of doing something, and somebody telling you that's improper or you cannot do something just based on they might be having a bad day. So then you have that. Then you also have the part of dealing with your loved ones. You know, you're separated from your loved ones. You don't get to see you. You know, I know that, you know, me doing 35 years in prison myself, one of the worst things about visitation is when your family has to get up and walk out of that visiting room and you can't go with them and they want you to go with them. That's terrible. I mean, it gets so bad that sometimes people even deny visits just because they don't want to deal with the trauma that comes with separation, which they call separation anxiety, separating from my family. And then the final thing I could add, well, two other final things I can add with that is just the hopelessness. You know, like the brother said again, you don't have to actually experience something really to become hopeless. And so hopelessness in and of itself is caused trauma because your mind is coming saying, you know, we're becoming so pessimistic. They're thinking us always me, always bad, always bad. And the system, the way it's created from the systems that I know about in America, they have this, you shouldn't have called a case in the first place. You shouldn't have did a crime if you don't want to do the time. So with that type of mentality, they don't do anything to try to give you hope unless you like with some friends or somebody, some kind of organization that might do so. But the last thing about that is with prison is it's traumatic in the fact that all of those things come together. So you have to deal with each and every one of those each and every day, except for maybe people who don't get visitation, which might be in some ways good. But you have a combined thing. So I think there's a combination. When you have combat post-traumatic stress disorder, you know that comes from being on the battlefield, being in war. So maybe you might hear, you know, gun shot, firecracker pop, and that makes you this. But just when you're dealing with the prison setting, just like with, you know, even coming out of slavery, because there is generational trauma as well. You know, it can be passed on. So these emotions can be passed on all the way from generation to generation. So when you have a combination of each and every one of those things going around daily, just the combination of those is even traumatic.
Dig that.
Look, man, you hit on so many points right there, brother, because you know, I'm coming from a little, you know, scientific background, and the reality is that, man, ain't the trauma that we've experienced collectively as a people ain't never been addressed. It's been compounded from generation to generation. So, like, I don't know if y'all familiar with this beautiful sister by the name of, it sounds like it from the title, but Dr. Joy DeGury. She has a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome.
Yes.
And I would pray that everybody on the call and everybody listening is familiar with this concept of epigenetics, right? Real fancy European term, real fancy white term that explains just the reality that if your peoples got treated in a way that traumatized them and it was never addressed, yes, they passing that brain chemistry down to you. Of course, you got higher cortisol levels, and compound that over, you know what I'm saying, 5, 6, 7 generations. Yeah, of course you're gonna have a higher stress level when the police get around you. Of course you're gonna be quicker to be triggered. Of course you're gonna live life expectancy 10, 20 years shorter than the masses of people that live in this country, right? So it's not a surprise. It's very well organized, and it's a shame that we even have to continue to have this conversation, that everybody in our community can't just simply agree like, yo, we got to stop. Something has to change. We got to abandon their institutions. But speaking to that idea of trauma and how prison can be traumatizing, I think, you know, you spoke to it, brother. I've been blessed to never have gone, right? They ain't caught me yet, right?
Yes, sir.
And so, you know, I done been in counties for days and counting, you know what I'm saying, 3-digit days. And that was more than enough for me. I didn't need the trauma like a lot of my other brothers who have, you know, who did 8 years, 10 years, 12 years, let alone the brothers and sisters that that we always gonna hold up. You know, the Mumia Abu Jamal. Shout out to Leonard Peltier, just got released.
Yes, sir.
But you know, we talking about 40, 50 years down and still keeping their head up, right? Still keep their sanity. So I really think that it speaks a lot to the mental and emotional strength of someone to be able to go through some of the things that we experience as Black men and not, again, as they say, I don't like the term, but crash out and just spaz out totally, and you know, be in a sunken place that I feel a lot of Black men unfortunately start off in as young men. So yeah, that's an interesting question, man. The big thing for me is that inherited trauma. You ain't got to experience it at all, but if your parents or your grandparents went through it, which as people of African descent, we all have, you know, you got it. It's all about how you deal with it.
I want to say something about that post-traumatic slave syndrome, the book that the sister wrote. In there, she speaks about how, although it's unconscious, when a white mother or parent takes their child to see it, like a parent-teacher conference, and they say, "Oh, little Billy's doing great in school." Well, the white mother or the white parent may say, "Yeah, he's doing great and everything. We just love him. He's great." However, from slavery, as we know, they wanted to use the best of us or take the best of us to sell us off. So with the Black mother or the Black parents, they may say, the teacher may say, "Well, Billy, Jamal's doing really good. He did this. He's doing great." And our mothers have been programmed to say, "Yeah, well, we still have to work on this. We still have to work," because they don't want him to seem as though he's doing the right or doing perfect or being good because of that slavery syndrome that he might get passed off or sold somewhere else. So it can be, you know, inherent as well as it being passed on through the generations of us conditioning.
It's culture, and it's sick, brother. It's culture. It's culture. It is American culture for little Black boys to dumb themselves down because it would cost you your life.
Yes, sir.
Don't you dare demonstrate a strength in reading. And it's trippy because technically we hundreds of generations removed. I mean, hundreds of centuries. You know, we centuries removed from slavery, right? But yes. I as an educator, you can't tell me that little Black boys don't still, you know, indirectly fear the idea of being intelligent.
Yes. Well, two things I want to add to that as well. So we were in slavery longer than we've been released from slavery or emancipated from slavery. So they say, if you talk just roughly, we can use the 400-year thing. Well, we've only been out less than 200 years. So you still have a lot of residual stuff that's going on there that hasn't been dealt with. But I want to say this: when I was into the prison, got into prison after I got through my wild days of like, I don't care because I'm so hurt. I want to hurt people. I want to trip out. I just want to, like you say, crash out. I want to do that. Once, you know, some older men got to me and said, "Hey, man, let's calm down and let's try to, you know yourself and let's try to get through this thing." Well, after years of that, and I started to go on, and I thank the Creator for giving me the ability to be able to learn certain things and be able to, you know, retain certain information and the behaviors that went with it. However, a gentleman told me years ago, this brother told me, said, "Hey, man, Mustafa, don't let this system where these people know how smart you are because they won't release you." So we would think, you know, something saying like that. So I got to be dumb and everything so that I can't, you know, the people won't keep me in prison. That don't make sense. Well, as I start teaching classes, I start being a professor, as I start doing all the things to help others in prison, my sentence got longer and longer and longer. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but when you know stuff, you become a threat, especially for us. When you know stuff, you become a threat. And so here comes that cognitive dissonance again, which means, again, you know, you think in one way, but then something different goes away from that exact thinking, and it just causes some kind of confusion. And as we know, most of us don't like to be confused about things, especially as men. We like to know what's happening, what's going on, and know where we're going. So my point with this was, I started realizing that, you know, the hard heads, the knuckleheads that they knew that would come back to the prison, they were releasing. I seen guys that come in, you know, me and you know, several people and everything. They're coming in 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and they you know, some substantial amount of cases. I'm not talking about just petty crimes or whatever, but they knew if we allow you to go out, you're probably going to do more. You might take some more people out with you when you come. And then again, prisons are designed to make money these days. It's a corporation. So anytime I got beds to fill, if I can bring people in there to fill them beds, that's like my product and everything. So I don't care about you going out if I know you're going to come back. However, for those who might go out and try to make a change, those are the guys that do 30 years and 40 years and 50 years and stuff outside of what they should have actually done. So that in and of itself, you know, having to dummy down, like the brother said, you know, sometimes you got to dummy yourself down in order to save your life.
And that's alluding back to both of you brothers' points. That's what the Black mothers was doing. You know, they had to dumb down the accomplishments and achievement, and like you said, they still do it to this day. And it's that generational curse, that generational thing of, hey, they might take my son. They not gonna take him and put him into chattel slavery, but they might take him and put him into another kind of slavery, you know. So yeah, Darnell, he did okay, but you know, we're still working on so many things with him, and he still needs to do this and this and this, and oh my God, you should just see him at home, you know, and that's what they do, because in their mind, I gotta save my baby life, you know what I'm saying, by lessening him to other people, you know. You may build him up and praise him at home, but in front of these white folk, oh, I need to dumb this all the way down, you know.
But not just for the parent. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
And not just for the parents dumbing us down. How many times do we do ourselves that way? You know, I may be amongst peers and everything and know that I'm chosen or know that I'm supposed to be in a better position and very well could be in a better position. But if I, you know, do what I was chosen to do, if I do what my purpose is, it might offend my friends around me. That in and of itself causes anxiety. You know, so you say, well, dang, I got my vocabulary together. I'm learning stuff. I'm speaking well, but then I get around a certain group of individuals who don't like that, or ain't a part of that. Are you bougie, man? Are you trying to, what's that term? My son called me this once. He said, whatever the word is. But so now you got to dumb yourself down, which causes a conflict again in your thinking. I have to act a certain way around certain people that are even my people. So that can cause problems. Yes, sir. And anxiety. Boosie. He said I was Boosie. He said I was Boosie.
Yeah. So I've never tripped about sounding Boosie, you know, because like I had, even in my most gangster days, you know, they was like intelligent cuz, you know, because I was like, man, you know, because my vocabulary, I've always had
an extensive vocabulary.
You know,
yes,
I've had an extensive vocabulary my entire life. Now, when I was younger, I didn't know a lot of them words meant, but I knew how to use them in a sentence properly, you know. Hey. And it wasn't until I read that dictionary that I really realized, that's what that word meant. At least I was using it correctly. You know, I was using it in the right syntax. So my vocabulary has always been dope, and you know, I never worried about, because for me, it was more about pulling people up. Like, it was a time I didn't cuss. Like, man, I'm verbalizing myself to the point to where I'm thinking that everybody understands me. But unfortunately, most gang members don't have anything past an 6th to 8th grade education. You know, just by and large. You know, so if you tell a group of young gang members, hey, I need y'all to go over there and thrash this dude, they like, what? Thrash? What is that? What is thrash? This is a real situation. Like, I'm not even making this up. Like, this is literally what happened. Go over there and thrash dude.
Incapacitating.
Right.
They like, what do you mean thrash? I was like, hey man, go fuck him up.
Right.
Why you just didn't say that?
Right. We get that.
That's what I said. You know, so you know, I know how it happens, but there may be instances as to where I may do that here and there, but by and large, I'm gonna pull you up. I'm not gonna dumb it down.
I mean, you know, the thing that's always trippy for me, fellas, is how it's like, we gave the world so much of this knowledge, like black men in particular. You know what I'm saying? Black men. And it's always amazing to me how, you know what I'm saying? And I think to that point, brother, Kendrick said it, right? We're not going to fake humble because other people are insecure.
Right.
And it's like, you know, since I went the other route, I was blessed to not get caught up on that incarceration road. I got some expensive pieces of paper, bro. It's the same struggle. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna dumb myself down, but I can't get too caught up in my expensive piece of paper because brothers I'm gonna lose y'all. You know what I'm saying? Right. But I also feel like that speaks to that question of culture, brother. Because like, man, when I think about, you know what I'm saying, my uncles and my grandparents, man, you would never be no dumb nigga.
Right.
Ever. It was like what? But in my generation, in the 80s, brother, it was like you better be the dumb nigga. The coolest niggas was the dumbest nigga. And it's just crazy how I would argue that time has come back around. Where like ignorance, I argue it's slowly eroding because of brothers like Kendrick, but ignorance is the preference. We supposed to, you know what I'm saying, fit into this box of the nigga. And I'm like, nah, bro. I constantly tell my sons and my students, bro, what would be America without the nigga? Where would this country be if we didn't self-identify as this losing ass group of people? As this man, like you said, we all start off in this position. And I would argue, like some of my teachers taught me, bro, some of the smartest brothers is the brothers that say, I'm not finna keep doing this. I'm done in 8th grade. I already know what y'all setting me up for, right? But if they don't have that cultural context to take that winning attitude, I would argue, that healthy attitude, and to focus on something productive, man, they focus on the things that are available. You know what I'm saying? And we be the best gangsters, the best killer. You know what I'm saying? We be the best at it. But what is it? Is it helping our nation? You know?
Hey, but I applaud all the teachers that keep calling me back to talk to their students after I tell them to not let school get in the way of your education. You know what I'm saying? Like I tell, and after I warn the teachers, and they be like, no, go ahead, say what you need to say. Hey, don't let school get in the way of your education. You were look, I'm old. I ain't never used trigonometry in my life. Not once. I don't need to know how these triangles do what they do. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I've never used it in my life. Math, math is important. I'm not, saying nothing negative about math, but multiply, divide, add, subtract, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. After that, it was a wrap.
Look, man, I know engineers and architects that tell me they don't use that stuff.
I promise you don't use geometry like that.
Yeah.
I promise you don't use geometry like that. So my thing is, I like I said, I applaud all the teachers that have allowed me to come back and talk to their students, because I keeps it all the way raw with them. But at the same time, they have to understand that I had a second, third grade. It's during COVID, and we were doing the COVID stuff. So the kids was indoors learning. I'm paraprofessional doing that, and it was this thing about the street light, or the traffic light, right? And whatever this little boy was reading said that, of course, who was it? Thomas Edison invented let school tell it. Thomas Edison invented every damn thing.
Man.
Thomas Edison invented. I was like, no, sir, it wasn't. And when I told him that it wasn't Thomas Edison, he did not believe me. And I'm like, ask Google. just ask Google who really invented it. And man, when he saw that black man on there, he was like, lies. They've been telling me lies. I think I created a little revolutionary at that moment,
And
my man,
my thing is like, bro, it ain't even my thing is like, man, everybody ain't got to be a revolutionary, bro. I think some of my middle schoolers used to be like, damn, man, he's still talking about the Panthers again. Like, ain't this science class? You feel me? But my thing is like, bro, I just need you to realize that you don't have to be a sheep, right? Like, you don't have to fall into this category of a safe Negro. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can know the right history. You can act on that history, and most importantly, I argue, not be jailed or killed because you give a damn about your people. Because I argue that's one of the biggest fears is like, we know we gonna get locked up because you either gonna be a thug or you're gonna be an entertainer, right? You got two options. You're a black man, so pick one, right? You're gonna play some sports. right?
You
Or
only
you
two.
gonna get locked up, right? What happened
Yeah.
to the scholars? What happened to the organizers and the activists, dog? And then my thing is like, why can't both of these two? Because Pac was definitely a thug, but he was a scholar. You got to know the history, right? And I mean, I'm always thinking about the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's and the brothers that was definitely athletes, but also was activists and scholars. Like you couldn't separate the two, and that's why that's come back to culture for me. Because like I remember talking to kids in juvenile, right, working with being a teacher in the juvenile detention here, and nobody knew what drapetomania was.
Oh,
Nobody was familiar with this, and I'm like, bro, this is a legal concept. It's on the books in the United States, whatever the halls of legality, whatever they call it, right?
yeah.
That
Psychology.
yeah, right. So can either one of y'all brothers enlighten what's drapetomania? Hit them with that one.
It was a term that was coined by the psychologists, the philosophers back in the day when they tried to prove that it was insanity for a slave to want to be free or to escape. So they were saying, why would you want to leave something as beautiful as being whipped and chained and beat, and you get a meal and you get some clothes and you get that's insanity for you to want to escape. So they made this a clinical diagnosis that if you wanted to escape slavery or to be free, then you were the insane person.
Yeah, talk about psychology, right?
I mean, this was a psychological evaluation. This was like a real thing.
Just like they give people bipolar, diagnose people with all them mental conditions. Drapetomania was something that they tried to hit us with. And I would argue that you'd be crazy to not have drapetomania. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I talked to a few brothers that talk a lot about, man, the reality is that the prison is really outside of these walls.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm always amazed when I see brothers locked up got Instagram accounts and Twitter accounts and got cell phones now, and I'm like, they smoking their weed, they doing everything that they doing outside. And a lot of brothers will come out and be like, bro, this is really, you can get a lot of the stuff in there, but it's a safer space. Out here, it's no restrictions. You know what I'm saying? You can get caught up in whatever you want to, like you said, to get you to fall back into that. Just go on and go back, brother. Just go on and go back.
So back on that real quick. What's the traumatic part? Let's talk about the traumatic part about being released from prison, especially after having done a long bid. Now, we talked about how it was before. We even alluded to a real traumatic part for especially black men, just getting pulled over. The police getting behind you when you hearing the whoop. It may not even be for you. It's been times where the police was trying to get by me to go somewhere else, but I saw the lights come on. My heart got to racing. I'm not doing anything illegal, right? But when them cherries go on behind you and you hear that whoop, immediately your heart's like, oh, shit.
Here we go.
Here we go, and then they go by you and it's it's like it's like a release. It's like serotonin going by when the police bounce. You know what I'm saying? And like you said, it's cortisol when they behind you. So if that's the case, when you have the possibility of being arrested for nothing that you did, what is the case when you've done 15, 20, 35 years in prison and then you're released into a world that you've only seen on TV?
Man, I'd have to agree with the professor pretty much that, slavery, chattel slavery, whether it be chattel slavery and mass incarceration are pretty much synonymous. So if you've lived in the streets in America, a black man, you don't have to go spend 20, 30 years to understand what incarceration is like. So like you're saying, some of the very things that go on in the streets that we deal with, them same people that was doing what they was doing in the streets are inside the prison. The difference is when you're inside the prison, you can't escape it. So on the streets, if me and you fall out, I can go to another city and everything, or I can just move around and get away from it. I'm probably going to see you the next day after we got into it in there. So there's no escaping unless when you go to protective custody. So as far as the release goes, it's the same thing because there's a different culture shock. The same culture shock that you have going into that environment, now you're coming out. And so I'm talking about, me being a long-term prisoner, it's a little different from somebody that does 1 or 2 years, but even person that does 1 or 2 years, if iPhone comes out with a new cell phone every other 6 months or whatever, then the culture shock of you having to learn the different stuff that's on that new one, though you may have already knew 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So there's always some kind of culture shock, the way things have changed, the way things, look differently. I went back to my old neighborhood after 35 years and looked at it and I was like, what is this new urban housing development? That ain't the house it was all gone. So in a way, some of me left because the house that I grew up in was gone. So you have to deal with the culture shock and the not knowing how to do certain things. One thing's about the reentry programs that are inside of prison, they pretty much set you up how to get a job and how to work when you get out of prison. You've heard me say this before. They don't talk to you about your mental health. They don't care about your post-traumatic stress. They don't care about that. You just need to get out, make sure you can pay them parole fees to get us our money so you can stay out there. So they don't care about that. Another one of the things that's a problem with that is survival guilt. It's just like in the streets when your homeboys get killed and everything, you out there still doing it. That's why you pour out your liquor and you think about, man, the homie's dead, he ain't with it. Well, what about all the guys that you made contacts with and friends with while you're inside the prison? Even though we don't believe that happens because it's such a violent, vicious place, there's love inside of prison, believe it or not, because it's a human condition. And so if humans can do it, they do it in there as well. So when I tell you I did 15 years with you and then you're going home the next day, that's a culture shock for the person that has to stay, but it's also the same way it's called survival guilt that you have when you leave. Another also thing that I've learned from myself personally is you have certain performance anxieties. Everything is pretty much, routine and given to you inside of prison. You don't have to go and ask, certain things because it's just mandatory that they give you certain stuff. So I had an incident where I went to Chipotle's. I didn't understand that, they have bowl, they have whatever. I had to make my own meal. I had to get my own, I want this, I want that. Well, nobody told me that. So while in prison, I'm sitting there watching. Yeah, I want to go to Chipotle's. Everybody talk about the Chipotle thing. Let me check this out. I get up there and the man said, so you want a taco, burrito? I said, yeah. He said, well, what do you want on it? It's all this different variety. Prison burrito, you got 2 things in there. Well, I don't know. It's one of them things. I don't even know what that is. But you got some meat and you got some beans. You don't got no variety of stuff. You don't get to choose what you want on your burrito. So I was stuck. I'm like, what does he mean? What stuff do I want? So now I'm trying to look and do this. And in my mind, everybody that's behind me is mad because I'm making these choices and they trying to, hey, hurry up. It's 15 people behind you. So that caused the whole actual meltdown in Chipotle. I haven't been back one. I went one time and was done with that. So you have to do it not only the appointments, even when it comes to like sexual activities with women. So you think a man want to get out of prison, been a long time, want to go get him some, that's what he do because he's been deprived of that. Sometimes brothers, from what I've heard, they get there and it's time to get down and stuff. And they like, hey man, we ain't ready for this. You didn't tell us about, and so that's that disconnection from the emotion and the actual thought. Your thought is saying, yeah, but the emotion is like, we haven't done this in so long and everything. This is, we don't really have a reference for this right now. We know we want to do it, but the mind might be willing, but the body might, be doing something else. Another thing too is, which one of the things I have learned also since being out, there's no group, and maybe, some brothers on the podcast, we might be able to put one together who's interested in, healing those who've been incarcerated. There's no group for your family. So when you get out, they got little groups for you to go to. So who acclimates your family into receiving you back into the family? Now, because I got out, you say they got the wide open, they want to see you there, but they don't know how to deal with the issues that you got. They don't know how. They was just there to support you while you were in prison. So now that you're out, you're moving into their space. You got to do something different. So their whole dynamic has to change because of the way, because you're coming out of prison. So there's a lot to deal with that. Also being able to, certain things and, like the brothers say, ready to crash out. In the prison mentality, sometimes you have to get down in order to save yourself because you know how it goes. Just like on the if you don't fight, you don't do whatever and everything, somebody's gonna take advantage of you. So now what happens when you got that traumatic situation going with that, and then you come home and having disconnected it from it, and it could be somebody that bumps into you coming out of the Walmart or something like that, and your mind jumps to, if he would have bumped on me in prison like that and everything, this might have caused some kind of incident. So you have to train your brain. Well, I'm saying that the system doesn't give you anything to try to help you get out of the institutionalization. They just throw you out there and say, get you a job and stay out of trouble.
I laugh, brother. It's not funny, but it's terrifying how all of this sounds just like what they do when you graduate high school.
Yeah.
They mistreat you, they mislead you, right? And I'm talking about school, not so much prison. They underprepare you. And the thing I wrote down listening to you is the idea of social emotional learning. Oh my God, in this classroom, that's everything. Oh, they not listening. They don't finish their work. Well, they need some more social emotional learning, right? But it's the exact same thing. If I beat what they say, I don't know which one of the great ancestors of the Panthers that it was. They say they break your leg and then they charge you for being crippled.
Right.
So it's like you put me into this pot of emotionally immature people on the outside and inside. But when it's on the inside, like you said, it's concentrated, right? And then we send you out with none of these skills and expect for you to make something of yourself is difficult, man. I would argue it's very well organized. It's not an accident that all of them a lot of them things you describe sound exactly like the school system.
Let me get to some of these comments real quick. So going back up, this is when we was talking about I think the question was what does what's traumatic about being in prison? That's what it was. That had to be what he was answering. So KP said the killings, all the homosexual BS, seeing people you have known from childhood give up on fighting for freedom, seeing folks in general just mentally give up. You know, that's a huge one. You know what I'm saying? Another one, Rufus said, you become stagnant. Then when we go down, I think by this time we was talking about what is the difficulties upon when you released. Rufus said not being able to provide for yourself and have to depend on others. So now, that's probably a huge.
I'm gonna speak to that one because it was Dr. Claude Anderson that taught me, dog. Black Labor, White Wealth is one of the books that I recommend. If you're literate, read it to your 6-year-olds for bedtime. But he talks about how the whole point of slavery, I would argue, is the same point of prison, to leave you economically castrated. You come out of prison, you got to check that damn box. So, you know what I'm saying? If you ain't got a legit hustler's mentality, you've been getting it your whole life on the underground economy, of course, you know, but to deprive us of our economics is what causes, I would argue, that mental exhaustion, bro. You can't provide for yourself, let alone your kids, your family. Yeah, I'm gonna go take something from somebody and not give a damn about what you tell me.
But then what happens? These kids they by the grace and they get through high school, right? And they happen to come out with some good grades, and now they tell their parents, "Hey, I want to go to college." And it was a thing saying that it was a kid, black kid, walked up to an old white dude. He was about to graduate, and had his cap and gown on, had his little robe on, and he asked him, was like, "Hey man, how do I look?" You know, fixed his little hat. White dude looked at him and said, you look like a lot of debt. You look like a lot of debt. You know, so that's
expensive pieces of paper, brother.
Yeah. Because that's financially crippling them too. You know, because you want to go to college, and get $100,000 bill that you ain't gonna be able to pay. You heard Johnny and Cecil. You know, if anybody's been paying attention to the podcast previous now, you know, it's brothers like that that'll tell you they are in hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of school debt. You know what I'm saying? You know,
they psychologists
still for real. You know. All right, check this out. So, bro said, I think the most unfair thing the system does is ask you to change and force you to live in the environment that created the darkness you displayed. Imagine the difference in mentality for someone who did 25 years and spent most of it unleashing self-destruction. Releasing self-destruction is the norm. I agree with quite a bit of that, but
it says unlearning.
What is it? Unlearning self-destruct.
I know a handful of brothers that went in and came out, you know, with all respect, man, fucking amazing, bro. Like, you talk about elevated. It's a minority of brothers that I've had experiences with. But man, I mean, brothers taught themselves the guitar, you know what I'm saying, made contacts that they traveling the country off these contacts, right? And not doing bad, but really doing major things, man. That part is still profound to me. Like you said, you hear all the horror stories, but it's times when brothers go in there and they become their best self, man. Because there's still like you said, brother, there's still plenty of love in there. I was shocked to hear these stories about this brother telling me the relationships he built. And I'm like, really? Did nobody try to drop the soap type shit on you? He like, nah, bro, it ain't all like that, bro.
Yeah.
Well, I want to speak to. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to finish the point of forcing you to live in an environment, right? Now, one of the things you learn just in life, you know, especially if you was a knucklehead when you was young, and you get older and you develop a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of understanding. Once you change your playmates and change your playground, you know, a whole lot of stuff changes. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you keep the same playmates that had you going to the joint to begin with, you keep them playmates and you keep playing on them playgrounds, you're going to get them same scrapes and scars on your knees, you know. But when you change your playmates and you change your playground, you know, you might mess around and change your future.
Well, sometimes it's not just about changing. I'm sure sometimes you have to elevate. You know, it was just ironic to me how you actually have gang leaders in prison. So you have enough wherewithal, you have enough charisma to be able to lead a group of dudes into taking somebody's life for you. You can do that. But at the same time, when it comes to you learning something for yourself and teaching it to them whole homeboys, because I mean, I thought that's what so-called big homies and OGs was supposed to do, pass down the information so that you would, you know, end up in a better position than you were when you got into the gang. But things have changed these days, you know. So with that being the case, yes, you're 100% correct. There are so many beautiful, enlightened brothers, because remember this, the knowledge of self is so important. And when you're trapped in the cell 24 hours a day with nothing but yourself, you either going to fight. Either you're going to fight yourself all the time and keep on fighting and so, or you're going to study some self. When you start studying self, you start learning things, you start to want to do better. It only took me 2 weeks of being locked in the county jail to realize the streets wasn't for me no more. If I had to do anything to take a risk to send me back to that place right there, it wasn't for me. You could call me a square all you want and everything, but prison is not the place to be. It's not cool about it. You might have your homeboys there. You get to, you know, pull your thing out, have a little fun here and there and everything. Your very, very, very worst day on the streets cannot even be, it will always be better than your best day in prison.
Always.
Your worst day on the streets is better than your best day in prison. Even if you're a good hustler, you'd have made $100,000 in the feds while you was in there and everything, you can still spend the same amount of money to do to make $25. Same stuff. Well, except for P. Diddy, he gets to get some kind of little scooter and ride around. So, but anyway, but you know basically what I'm saying. You still got to buy from the system, you know, no matter whether you got $100,000 or you got $25 on your books. But there are some enlightened men. There's some great, actually, the brother minister Louis Farrakhan said the next great leader of our people is going to come out of the prison system.
Yes,
and if you look at Malcolm and all those other type of people like that, we have many of them that was incarcerated. Even if you go back to biblical time. So yes, that's the time to reflect and that's the time to be that. But somebody has to teach you that. You know, lucky for us, you know, me and, you know, the brothers that I knew, there were older heads that say, hey, man, we're not scared about you. I don't care the little crooked stuff you do with your fingers. That stuff don't mean nothing to me. You going to do something. I remember when I first met the brother that raised me in prison, I had a black eye and went to visit. And so when I went to visit, I had to visit my mother and my children. You know, they were young at the time. And so when I was leaving to visit, this man comes to me that I don't know and says, how long you'll keep disrespecting your mother? And so you know how we are about our mamas. You hear the word mama, you hear the word disrespect.
You about to get swung
you know?
on, right?
Yeah, I was upset about that and everything, but he broke it down. He said, every time you steal your mother's child, no matter how many years you do in prison, every time you go out there with a black eye, and these black eyes came from fighting, not running, but coming out there to see to your mother, she has to see her child, which is still considered her baby. That's kind of disrespectful to her. You being discourteous. So why don't you learn how to do stuff when you ain't got to go out there and visit your mother like that? I was like,
because that's traumatic to her.
Yes, it's traumatic to her.
Child
and like
coming out with a black eye.
Brother. Yeah, to them kids.
Because she don't know what led up to the black eye. She don't know what's gonna come after the black eye.
She didn't see the other guy.
Right,
exactly.
Right. All of that.
See the other guy. Yeah, all that.
You never get out. So yes, and that's another thing. And we're talking about mass incarceration. Incarceration doesn't just affect the person that's incarcerated. Your families, your friends, your loved one. One of my cousins who was actually supposed to be on the show this night, but she had another engagement. One of the things she said to me after release, she said, when a person dies, and she's a clinical psychiatrist. Mm-hmm. Once a person dies, like your family member passes away, we mourn for them, but we know they're dead. But when you have a person that's incarcerated, it's like a double grievance because you don't know if they're going to get out. You can still see them sometimes. And the parole board says, well, you can't go this year. Give them 2 more years. So they have to live that grief over and over and over. And that's why we say combine. So there's something needs to be done in the Black community, this prison situation, since mental health and trauma is a public national health emergency. Yeah. That's over the nation. And so one of the things I also learned is the time that brothers that we know inside of prison that committed suicide, a lot of us didn't make it. Some dudes found themselves woke up with their neck around a sheet. So like KP was saying, well, sometimes they use the statistics of what's going on in prison, the suicides in prison, to match it in with what's going on in the general population. So there's a lot of, hangings and stuff like that. Suicide, sometimes do one, death by cops. Just let the police kill me. I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get out of this situation. But it's really bad. And so us as a people, if we're talking about grassroots organizations, in my personal and humble opinion, starting with the prisons and getting an understanding of that, because really those are like mental health facilities in and of themselves. That's right. But you just have to have us to be able to try to help us, because the mental health that they have in there, they're going to say either you're going to take some pills, I'm going to allow you to talk to somebody once a week, but then talking to somebody, a therapist once a week, and then going back into the situation. That's like you talking about jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. Okay, I went and got some frying pan therapy today, but as soon as I leave, I got to jump back into the fire. So sometimes that's not a feasible way of getting some mental health, but it's very necessary. And I'm glad you're doing the show, brother. Really.
Well, it's because of you that I'm doing it,
Awareness.
We discussed this a little over a month ago. Nah, it was longer than that because it was another show we was doing, and we just got on this, like we got off on a tangent, and next thing you know, he was like, man, you need to do a show about mental health, and it turned into a whole month. So shout out to you for even putting the idea in my head, because it was you, and I want to say you in school said the exact same thing, and I'm like, man, okay, I got you. Let's do it. We're gonna make a month of it. And I appreciate everybody that has got on to these very needed, very critical discussions. This is not the last time we're gonna do it. It might not be a month the next time, but but we're not done talking about mental health. We're not done talking about mental health in the Black community. We're not done talking about the post-traumatic effects of what it's like for somebody who has been incarcerated to get out, because what people have to realize, the mass majority of people in prison are going to get out one day, right? And
85%.
What is it? 85%? That's what I thought. Yeah. They're gonna get out one day, and you're going to have to interact with these people. Now, do you want people that's coming out with a detriment of EQ? You know what I'm saying? Or do you want men coming back out to society that at least have some bearing on their emotional quotient and their emotional intelligence? Yes. Because a lack thereof, we call it reoffending. I would think that you would want all of the top-notch mental health professionals to be in reentry. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's where they need to be. They need to be in reentry. But reentry is a joke. And
ain't enough money in that.
It really ain't.
Like you said though, we gotta have grassroots, bro, because ain't nobody gonna solve that problem but us, because we the people that deal with it.
Nobody else.
You know what I'm saying? It's the people. We got the most folks coming out. You know what I'm saying? I think about the age of some of these folks. Man, and I always want to lead the listeners with something that they can start and doing tomorrow, man. Like, yes, I know, sir. I'm involved. Go to your church, man. Go to your community center. Hell, go. Start with your family and your block, but just you know, we know these brothers and sisters, man. If anything else, I know I'm a big fan of these, like what they call them, think tanks. You know
Yeah.
what I'm
Yeah,
saying? This is a
absolutely.
version of a think tank, but having that
Every
monthly
week.
think tank on mental health, right? A weekly think tank on mental health. It may start with you and one other person, but really documenting what y'all talk about and really following through on building programs so that, man, you can rent out a room at the library and have this conversation, man. It's needed though, bro. It's
Hey,
needed.
so on that tip, man, give the viewers something. Give me your parting words before we get to shout outs and shameless plugs.
Oh man, man, if I say my closing remarks, man, like, brother, this is, you know, I see it all as an allegory, man. You know, like they talk about God and heaven and earth is right here in you, right? It's all in you. We got everything we need to solve this problem, brother. And we just got to look within. We got to look into our families, into our friend communities and relationships, and just kind of stand on the fact that, yo, this ain't the type of humanity, the quality of humanity that we gonna leave a legacy on. You know, I think that's the big thing, is just be like, yo, we see how it is, but this ain't what we gonna leave it. This ain't how we gonna leave it. You know. But yeah, I got ultimate faith, brother. We been winning. They only been in the lead for a little bit.
Hey, here's the thing. They had a 500-year head start, and they mad because they got a slim lead. That's crazy.
It's crazy. They working hard.
They working hard for a slim lead. You had 500-year head start. Go ahead, bro.
Well, I guess my parting words will be to give an understanding of this is us when we're talking about racism or any of that stuff, whatever the case may be. The term that usually comes before it is systematic. So it's not about people. It's not about the police. It's about a system that is created with different ebbs and flows and everything. Most times it goes against us, but it is a system. So if we can collectively, you talked about collective think tanks or whatever. That's one of my ideas, and maybe I will have them put us together to do something of that nature. But if we're the ones out here that they claim or show or portray as the criminals, the one, and God forbid, we don't have to get into that debate, but we are the criminals. We are the ones that they're making the money off of. We're the ones that suffered the most from it. Our families are being broke up by it and everything. Of course, you're correct. We have to be the ones to heal and save ourselves. So with that being the case, know that prison is real. I mean, one of the things, hey, the brother's going to do thing on hip hop. I love hip hop, and I say this every show. Love it. Was there from the beginning. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. However, hip hop is one of the biggest media tools and everything that's helping to lead us to prisons. Unfortunately, we have to say that. I mean, because I'm thinking if we're so creative, we can talk about 15 different ways to sell one drug. We got 15 different ways. I can rap to you 15 ways how to sell this drug and everything. How can you rap to me and my children about keeping us out of prison, going back into slavery? We never like to talk about slavery because we said that's so far along. It's happening right here, right now, today, 2025. So I guess my parting words would be realize that prison and incarceration and trauma can come. It happens with you first. And then it leads to something bigger, the systematic part of it. But release your mind, man. Like, again, Malcolm X said, it doesn't take steel bars and concrete to make a prison. Some of us are in prison as millionaires, as 100,000-aire right here on the streets. Because if you'll risk your life for some money, you're risking your life for some money. You're living your life, and I'm talking about incarceration or death for some money. It got to be something better than that. I'm not saying don't get money, because we know in the economic system that we got, it requires that. So I'm not against getting the money, but I'm saying, while you're getting it legally, you should be thinking of how to get it legally. So don't incarcerate yourself.
Real rap. I think my parting words is, first off, to kind of let people know I'm not a teacher. I'm an awakener, and so I'm just trying to just wake you up, like they said in Spike Lee joint, wake up, So
stay woke.
For real. So I'm an awakener. So mine is simple, and that's kind of stop settling for too little. Like we as a people keep settling for too little. It's like you still wanting 40 acres and a mule. Stop asking for 40 acres and a mule when, you know what I'm saying, you've been deprived of so much more than that. Like, you've been deprived of your mind. Like, I love The Great Debaters. You know what I'm saying? I love that movie, The Great Debaters, just for that one scene. When Denzel got them kids in there and he's like, we are here to help you reclaim, take back your conscious mind. Because clearly you have lost it. You know what I'm saying? You have lost your conscious mind. Technically, we didn't lose it. It was taken from us, and we just haven't reclaimed what was taken from us. So that's my thing. Like want more. It was, learn from your enemy. That's one of the cool. You learn from your enemy. Watch how they do it, figure it out, and do it better. And if they done showed us the way. They've shown us the way. So all we got to do, take it, break it down. What they say, reverse engineer it.
Right.
Put that joint back together. Let's go. But like the brother said, I look at this show as a weekly think tank. Like the guests that I come on here, I have everybody come on here, so I'm just not think tanking by my damn self. You know what I'm saying? Because I could just get on here, look at the camera, and be like, and just spout out everything that I got in my head. But two is better than one, as long as saying we all vibing the same. And I don't even mean the same exact thought. I just mean the same high vibration. We can be vibing high, and all three of us can say something different about the same thing, and all of us still vibe high.
Synergy.
So the synergy of, and that's what we've created tonight, I believe. So let me get y'all shout outs and shameless plugs, and we can get out of here.
Already, man. I know the big thing I wanted to kind of hit, man, is like the whole concept of dual and contending powers, right? Dual and contending powers. This is an old concept. It's an old communist concept. It's an old Panther concept that's saying, like we've all said, man, if these institutions ain't treating us right, just build your own. We ain't, you know what I'm saying? We ain't got to fight. We ain't got to protest. We ain't got to do none of that. Just build your own institution. Some of them are going to be easier to build than others, you know what I'm saying? Because it takes infrastructure, et cetera. But once we do that, brother, all we need to make sure we know how to do is defend our territory. Shout out to Black Wall Street.
Hold on. No. Hey, say that again for the people in the back, bro.
Look, bro, that's it, bro. Once we get dual and contending powers, we got to defend what our progress we making. We good, brother. We good, brother. That's the nail in the coffin for me, right? But if I got to hit my shameless plugs, man, it's Professor Lartey. You can find me on social media, under all the social medias, under Embracing Eastside, under Rock the Convo, man, you name it. But importantly, speaking of this topic, I want to make sure I shout out the Missouri Jericho Project. Get involved, man. We do monthly political prisoner writings. We do monthly game nights, and it's all centered around teaching, about a political prisoner that may be released, that may still be locked up, that may have joined the ancestors, but to keep those names alive, man, and to carry that torch.
Real right.
I have a couple speaking engagements, but at this time, due to political reasons, no. I'll share them at a later date. But I do want to give one shout out. I'd like to give a shout out to a brother by the name of Larry Wilkins. This brother did over 20 years in prison. He got out and joined the conflict resolution team in Kansas City, Missouri, and he teaches youth all day long. And not only does he teach the youth and show the youth by example, he's really doing it. I'm saying he's living a life. So I heard you use the term revolutionary. Only thing revolutionary basically means is one who makes an abrupt change. And so this brother has shown me, one of the examples of how he can get out and still live a life and have a great time, but make political change all at the same time. So, a lot of times we think that in order to be somebody that's righteous or somebody that's you got to be like a monk. You can't have a good time. It's always got to be about the system, and that it's not about that. You can live your life and create your life all at the same time while pulling up somebody else's life. You say the word teacher, I say reacher, whatever the case may be. But, please teach one. Well, I've seen the brother do it. The brother's seen me do it. We've seen each other do it. So let's continue to do it. That's my plug. Right. That's my
that name out. Sounds familiar. That name sounds.
He went from Gangster Nut to Hondo Gavivi.
Damn.
Yeah, I think you know who he is.
Nah, real rap. Hey,
from 12th Street to the world.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Look, he sound like Pete O'Neal, brother. That's what he sound like.
Right.
So, yeah, shout out to bro though, man. And maybe one of these days he'll come on the show. Maybe one of these days. So I'm gonna have to give him a call. But let me see. My shameless plugs is just about next month's show. And it's gonna be difficult for me to give a shameless plug about it because I haven't locked in what we're gonna talk about. But it may be because, like I said, this mental health thing is heavy. You know what I'm saying? It's for real heavy. So next month I kind of want to do something a little lighter. And so I am kind of leaning toward this two generations of hip hop. But if anybody thinks that this is just about listing who you think your top 50 greatest from 79 to 99 is, and from 2000 to 2005, you got me all the way jacked up.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You got me all the way jacked up. It might start there, but it's going to end in, why do everybody got to die in the song? You know what I'm saying?
Man.
Like, why do all of them got to be B's? All of them? All of them is B's? You know what I'm saying? Like, don't none of them deserve to be treated correctly? So we definitely gonna get into that, and I got a lot of homeboys that rap. So I plan on reaching out.
Speaking of which, Rail's album, don't forget it.
Oh yeah, what's Rail's album?
Excuse me, I was just saying. Remember, Rail's.
Hey, now here's the thing. Rail is the exception, not the rule. You know what I'm saying? Because Rail is coming with, with again that rough and rugged past, but he's not rapping about it. You know what I'm saying? He's rapping about, hey, this is where I came from, this is where I've been, this is where I am now, this is where I'm going, because I deserve everything good that come to me. That's what that's one of bro's songs. I deserve everything good that come to me. So shout out to the homie too, man.
His album drops April 25th.
April 25th. What's the name of it? He goes by S6.
Faith and Hope, I believe that's the name of it.
Faith and Hope. Show it. Yes, sir. Faith and Hope. And I think it's
ESKP.
Huh?
It's ES. Yeah. How you spell his name? Oh, he's got a different name for his rap stuff, but it's
so like it's spelled a different way. It could have just been called Really On for all out,
That's what
but
that's what I know him as.
Yeah. So but oh my God. Yeah. So man. Hey Rufus. Hey, good luck, bro. Cause the homie, hey man, look up Brandon Humphreys. He don't go by Don Gino. He go by something else. His
you breaking up
to his whole album. That boy hard. I'm definitely gonna try to get bro on the show.
Y'all still
when I'm doing this hip hop week. I'm gonna try and get Ghost on the show. We gonna do it up. But yeah. Oh yeah. Somebody got a shout out. Somebody got a shout out.
That's mine. That's mine.
All
Yeah.
right.
All right, Auntie Lisa.
All right. So, hey, this was your first time tuning in to Notoriously Opinionated. Welcome. If you've been rocking with the kids since day one, 4 years strong now, welcome back. Notoriously Opinionated is not gonna do nothing but get bigger and get better. Scribe Truth, that's his name, but he don't spell it with an I, spell it with a Y. Talking about the homie Brandon. Scribe Truth, SCRYBE, Scribe Truth. Check him out. Man, I appreciate both of my guests for coming on tonight. All I can tell you is like I tell you every week, man. Tune in next week to Notoriously Opinionated. We're gonna be on some other good stuff as always. And so I don't necessarily know like where this show is gonna go totally in the future, but I know it's going that way, you know. I know it's going that way, and we're going to keep having these think tanks. We're going to keep having these discussions, and we're going to keep trying to solve problems one notorious opinion at a time. Until next week, tune in to Notoriously Opinionated, same notorious time, same notorious station. And until then, peace.
Hold on.
We out.